today discussion we are trying to discuss transaction processing systems and management reporting systems. So we will go through these concepts, basically what happens and what are the key aspects related to this like transaction, what is transaction processing systems and how it connects with the management reporting system. So basically most of the cases transaction processing system is the major concern, but very little because management reporting system is nothing. It's quite easy to understand. It's just some sort of reporting mechanism. So the most of the cases, so most of the time we are spending to discuss transaction processing systems, and it's quite important. Okay, we'll start. What is a transaction? First of all, to understand what's transaction processing system, we should understand what's a transaction. So a transaction at a simplest level, and very basically, the simplest level can be defined as an event involving the action of one entity on another. So what's the meaning of that? It can be defined as an event. So it's an activity basically. So what happens here? It's an activity. So it's an event, an activity involving the action of one entity on another. So basically what happens, it's a sequence. It's not a one single independent activity. It has a sequence of activities, but it's just most of the time it's involving with a transfer. Exchange is often used to characterize the transaction. So it's an exchange. So what's the most important point that we want to understand in here? It's an exchange. So what happens in an exchange? We'll get an example. So there are two entities, entity 1 and entity 2. So there are two entities, and these two entities are trying to exchange some information. Sometimes it might be unidirectional, sometimes it might be bidirectional, both of the sides. It's not a problem at all once it comes to transaction processing system. It's not a big deal, it's not a big problem. So it's basically happens what the transactions are happening, how these transactions are moving. So this is the important point that I want to emphasize here. What's a transaction? So if you don't know what's a transaction, it might be a problem to understand the rest of the things. And one of very important thing that I want to emphasize here is it's not mean the financial transactions. So once it comes to transaction processing systems, there might be people like believe, all right, it's most of the cases it's financial transaction, how the money transferred from one into another or one account to another. So under these transaction processing systems, we are not supposed to discuss or scope down only to the financial transactions, but financial transactions also another transaction entity that represent that involved in an organization. Apart from the financial transactions, lot of transactions are there. It's the reality that we should understand. All right, it's not something only financial transactions, but there are a lot of transactions. What could be an example for this transaction? We'll get an example, a hiring process. Usually this is an operational sequence of activities involved to perform any activity. So I'll get an example like hiring process, and it's a sequence of operational activities. What happens in here? Basically, there's a candidate who requires to find a job. That's the reality, right? So what you are doing, you are creating your CV and send it to the relevant organization. Now, once organized received, right? Once organized received your CV, it's a transaction. This is the first ever transaction that you are performing to an organization or in an organization. Clear? It's a transaction. Why it's transaction? It's an activity. This is an operational sequence of activities. Now the activities are started in here. T1 activity started. involved in perform any activity. So after receiving this CV, there might be many transactions happen in an organization. It might be direct reject. Your CV might reject, or this CV is something not we expect or something we are looking into. Or it might be, so if it is rejected, it's another transaction. It's another activity simply, an exchange. And there might be another transaction happen. What kind of transaction? Like your CV is transferred or moved to the relevant technical person or the evaluator. There might be. So if it is transferred, it's another transaction. This is if it is transferred, then it's another transaction. Likewise, there might be a sequence of transactions involved in any given case. It might be hiring process, it might be procurement, it might be financial. Even if you are leaving an organization, there are a lot of transactions happening. That's the reality that you should understand. So basically, it's not something weird, but it's an activity. Basically, it's an activity happen in any case. But the specialty is this how this transaction involved, or how this activity involved with an organization, how the data captured. I get an example in here. Now you have sent an email to the HR people. Then the HR people captured your information. Now they store your information. Where is going? Where they are going to where they are supposed to save this information? If they rejected, how they delete your CV? Because CV is your private information. There are a lot of private information. If you some people do not like to share all the private information with general public, but there are cases people do like share, like LinkedIn like a public CV. So it depends. If you don't like to share, how these information is deleted, or do they kept it for next review? How long they keep your CV? So these kinds of information are very valuable. So this information will be recorded and stored. This recording process is the transaction process. But what are the features that we do not consider? We'll get an example. Like this person for somehow move few steps and okay, ready for the interview, and this person arrived to the organization in a given date. Now this person wearing a red color shirt or a white color shirt with a red color tie or something, but that information is not valuable for us. Why? There's no connectivity in between the CV and your wearing. There might be, but we don't want to save that information. Some people do like to have casual wear, or some people do like to have very smart wearing. It depends on them. I'm not speaking about wearing. The information that we are going to save, if you are wearing a red shirt or a blue shirt or a white shirt, HR system would not save that information in their databases. So that's the differentiate. You should understand this difference in between the transaction, valuable transaction and invaluable transaction. Now, if you are going to capture that information, or if you want to store what is the dress that this guy is wearing, sometimes it might be valuable. It depends on the question, but most of the cases, I don't think so, because it's out of the case for the transaction processing. So we don't want to bother about this transactional situation. Got the point? So we should understand the difference in between this transaction and non-transactional situations. If we want to perform a proper transaction, then what are the transactional information? We are discussing those things. What are the important points, and what are the things that we are going to save, and what are the things we do not save somehow. But as a high level, you should understand, all right, these are the invaluable information, like arrival time. Sometimes it's not a big deal. Sometimes the wearing, the shoes, shoe color, belt color, wearing any is there any tattoos in the body, or like anything else, like wearing a ring. So those kinds of information might be not much valuable, but some valuable information might be there to be recorded in a transaction. Is this person got successfully faced for the interview? As an example, if there are five questions are fired, but people like 90% people do not answer, or this guy specifically not answered. These kinds of things can be happen. So that's the reality that we should understand. So once it comes to these hiring processes, transaction processes, or financial transactions, or it might be administrative processes, purchasing, recruitment, a lot of things might be there. So each and every transaction we should record it properly in a proper manner. This information storage or temporal storage or transactional level information transfer from one to another is the main understanding or main or the key aspect under this transaction processing system. Now, I think you got the point. What's a transaction and what's not a transaction? What are the information captured and what are the information not captured? So throughout this session that I'm going to discuss the key features, the summarize. This is the summary that what I'm going to speak today. So I think you got what is a transaction processing, and formal. We'll see. We'll go one by one and we'll try to get an idea what are these things and how these things are. But right. If you do have any questions nowadays at all, you can stop me and ask any question. So that's okay. Transactions are not something like created all of a sudden. It's was something very older story, very ancient story that I would like to share with you. There are some more, so what we call different structures was there to save the data. So this is one of an example that I just found it. So what happens here, they store the slaves that they sell. They store the information in these plates. These are mud plates, and these mud plates, they save the transactions in between like two sellers or different people to store the information how many slaves that they have sold. So it's a temporal storage. So they want to keep a record on that. So that's the very ancient story for here. So you might understand, all right, it's not something all of a sudden comes into the context, but it's a very ancient story. Well, we'll go to the importance of recording the transaction. Now, why we want to store this information? Why do we need to record these transactions? So very first thing, a transaction happened. We'll get an example. A transaction happened. A person purchased an item. I get an example. This person is going to purchase we'll get an apple. Yeah, an apple going to be purchased from a supermarket. This is the case. A person going to purchase an apple from a supermarket. Now, actually, this person purchased this apple, and there was a system that recorded there was an apple purchased. Sometimes it might be not valuable who purchased it, but for the organization level, they want to keep a record. All right, if there's something sold, yeah, we sold it. Why? To manage the warehouse, to find the trends and other stuff, a lot of things. For some reason, they have recorded. So no worries at all. That's perfect. That's the expected level. Something solved, it's recorded. Perfect. This is not a big problem. It's quite easy. And a person came to the company and checked the apple. I don't want to purchase it. So the transaction wasn't happen. So the transaction wasn't happen. Now person arrived to the supermarket and left without buying an apple. Do we need to record it? Not at all. We don't want to record that information. So it's not recorded. Transaction not happened and it wasn't recorded. So fine. No worries at all. We can understand easily or something. There are thousands of people move in to the supermarkets and left without buying or purchasing anything. Such information we don't want to record. That's okay. It's their preference. They left. But we'll take these two cases one by one. There was a activity or a transaction happened actually. A transaction actually happened. An apple was sold. But unfortunately, that information not recorded. That information not recorded. Apple sold, but it wasn't recorded. Now, actual transaction occurred, but it wasn't recorded or recorded later. Later on, after a couple of days, just I sold an apple time back, 3 days back. I should record it. Sometimes it might be happen. Recorded later. So it's a big problem for both of sides, not for the seller, but for the not only for the seller, but for the buyer also. Because in any case, if there's something returned, that apple, there's a worm inside this apple, and this buyer back to the supermarket and telling, hey, there's a worm inside here. I can't eat this one. So what the shop is telling, sorry, we don't have such record that an apple was purchased from us. So it's bad, right? So it's quite bad for organization as well as for the customer. So customer will really get angry and upset, and organization will get a very bad reputation. So it's a big problem. There was a transaction happen, it wasn't recorded. So it's a big problem. So you should understand, all right, all the information should be recorded in the same time or near real time, at least the same time. Think a supermarket, what happens once you are purchasing something, in real time they store the data. They real time store the data, but it's not in the database for until now. So until that transaction ends, it's in a like a temporal place, isn't it? That's why they can do any modifications. If some transaction happens few days back, you have to go a big process. But all of a sudden, if you come back and tell, all right, I want to change it, then they can. You should understand this. That's the importance of this transaction happen and not recorded. And there's another worst case that transaction not happened. Person wasn't purchased an apple. No apples was purchased and left. But there is a record. All right, there's a transaction happened incorrectly. There's a record. So now what happens? It's a big problem. Now inventory is going to check it. After a while, they have some additional stuff. How these are? Because they're like, as an example, if it is like 30 apples in the store, and today there was 3 apples was by different people, but what happens? It recorded 5 apples. Now actually there's a problem, right? It's a problem because actual transaction wasn't happened. Actually only 3 transactions was happened, but they have recorded there was 5. As per the real data, it should be, the remain should be 27, but actually because of this incorrect data, it provides a record of 25, 27 and 25. It's a big problem. Now, this is another problem that we have to deal with. We should ensure only the transactions happen. Only the transaction happen really, if there's a transaction happen, that information should store, not any other thing. So as a summary, a transaction happened and recorded, no worries at all. Transaction not happen, not recorded, that also okay. But these two instances are the critical points for an organization. There was a transaction, a purchase happened, but it wasn't recorded. A purchase wasn't happened, but it was recorded. So these are the cases that an organization should careful. Now, how to solve this problem? We want to store temporary data, or temporarily all of the transactions happen. Then what's the easiness of? All right, real time it's saved. The nearest real time, at least it's saved. Then in any case something gone wrong, the organization or the supermarket can check it. Is that kind of a transaction happen? Then they can revert back and give the help to the customer, and customer is getting happy because all right, there was a record and it saved my life. So these kinds of saving or storage is usually known as this transaction. So we basically we focus on these two structures. Why? The transaction processing systems comes to save the business as well as the customer by having or storing data in real time. It might be temporal storage. It's not a permanent storage. It's just temporary storage of data, and data in the sense all the transactional data. Any questions needs to clarify? Okay, we'll go to the introduction of transaction processing system. Transaction processing system is a system that captures, enters, stores, retrieves, and processes the relevant details of business events and generates the information and documents necessary for running the business. This is one of cool explanation for transaction processing system. It's a system, and the purpose of this is capturing, grab the information, take the information from the external environment and enter that it. There should be a mechanism like user interface to enter the captured information. In simple terms, you might think, all right, it's just a barcode reader. That's more than enough. Or a keyboard, the data enter using keyboard, that's more than enough. Store. It stores temporary data. It's not a permanent storage, it's just a temporal storage. Retrieve. In any case, we should be able to fetch the data. In any case, we should be able to fetch the data back to the user interface or a report or something. It should be retrieve the data and process the relevant details of business events. So processing the information. In generic terms, you might say it's data to be processed to information. It's a processing part. The key term here is the relevant details of business events. Now, all the details are not required. As I state at the beginning, all the information that we don't want to capture. As an example, a person, we are going to hire a person. We don't want to capture what is the color of this shirt. We don't want to capture the color of shoes. We don't want to capture whether this guy walked in or this person came from a vehicle. Those information are irrelevant to our context. Now, you should define the context. Based on the different context, you may apply different data, and those are the event data, business event data, and those are the relevant data, and generates information and documents necessary for running the business. Relevant details of business events and generates the information and documents necessary for running the business. What are the information that required? It generates information and documents necessary for running. It keeps recording. So the recording of the process or the documenting process is mostly covered under management reporting systems. So always it's beyond the transaction processing systems. It's always beyond a transaction processing system. It's mostly covered under management reporting system. Why we want to store this data? To grab the data or fetch the data for future use. We want to save the data for future use. In any case, if you want to store or if you want to grab the data, we can do a simple activity and find it. As an example, a person joined to an organization, and after a while he left. And again, this person trying to move to the same company. Now the organization needs to fetch the data related to the personnel performance, how this guy improved, what are the missing pieces, how these things and that things are happening. Those are the documents that necessary for running the business. So it might be depends. I'm speaking strictly speaking again. It depends on the question that you are getting. An information system that processes data arise from the occurrence of business transaction. This is another cool statement that related to transaction processing system. It's an information system. Obviously, under this subject, we are focusing on information systems that processes data arising from occurrences of business transactions. So there might be different transactions happen in any given organization. We are focusing on business transactions, how these transactions are related to the business. I'll get the same example again. A person arrived to an organization as an interview for an interview. So we don't want to capture what is the dress code or what is the color of shoes or any tattoos in the body. Those are not business transactions or transactional data related to business. Got the point? So it's totally different from like what we are speaking in general terms and these business transactions. You should like go a little bit beyond and understand, all right, this is a business transaction. Always. For financial transactions, purchasing, recording, so those are, it's usual. It's not something a big deal that we want to keep. It's obvious because in many cases, we are collecting these transactional data. It's mandatory how the transaction happened, what are the processes was gone, and what are the things, and blah 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 blah. But in this case, we are mainly focusing on the structure or the behavior of a temporal storage or a temporal data storage. So these are business transactions because we don't have 1 terabyte to save all the data. We have very limited space. So transaction processing system supposed to keep temporal data, and it's an information system that grab the data that related to the business transactions. Primary concern is perform day-to-day transactions. Once it comes to transaction processing system, the key concern or the major concern is track day-to-day transaction, usually hourly basis, or it might be daily basis transaction, how these transactions happen. Because business wants to keep a proper record of information transferring from one end to another end, and they want to keep a record on how the data, the warehouse controls, what are the purchases that we require to do, and so on and so forth. So the primary concern is perform day-to-day transactions. There is a mechanism for store the information for a long time and process it if it is required. That's not transaction processing system. It's an analytical processing system. Those two systems are different. You should clearly understand a transaction processing system comes into the context when it is in real time or day to day, very short a period of time, very shorter periods are there. It's not storing for long time and analyzing. If it is storing for long time and if we are trying to analyze it, we speak it as a analytical process, or it's not something a transaction system. We'll have a small discussion on this entire structure, a large frame, the high level of the retrieval process. Now, what's a transaction processing system? It's a mechanism that retrieve or grab the data nearly in real time, or we are trying to push the data or insert the data into the system. It's an information system basically. So we'll have some sort of high level discussion in here. We'll see there's a customer. It's a story. A customer is in here. Now this customer has an inquiry related to the business. There might be simple, like as an example, an offer, a hotel offer. Hotel offer. It's an inquiry as a customer. You might want to check what are the hotel offers currently available, or simply when the university starts, or when I get my final marks. It's an inquiry. You're having a question. You're firing that question to a specific organization or people or something, any given case. So it's an inquiry. Now what happens in here, whenever you are performing an inquiry, there's a transaction processing system helps to perform these activities. What is the activity we want to check? We'll get an example again. We want to check when is I'm getting my results. So you can go to the relevant sites and check whether your results are available. Or if you want to check whether there's a hotel offer, and you may check, you may go to the website and you may check it. So what happens in here? You are performing an inquiry from a transaction processing system, but you might think, oh, really? It's something stored in database, isn't it? Yeah, actually, that's correct. If you are trying to find some information, So it's not something transaction processing system. It's something that's stored. But we'll get an example more little bit further. You just purchased an apple from a supermarket. You just purchased an apple from a supermarket. Now there's a worm inside. Just now, you just now done the transaction, and there's a worm. There's a worm. Now what you are doing? You are going back and you are mentioning to the cashier or manager or someone, hey, there's an issue in this apple. Then they might say sorry. And what they are doing, they might ask for a refund or something similar for similar apple, like similar weight and something like sometimes a little bit further even. Where that information stored? That information stored in a transaction processing system. You should clearly understand the difference in between these. It's not stored in a database like a long time. It's just something just now happened. Sometimes it's not sync. If you go to the head office and perform that complaint, sometimes they don't have updated that information. Now you might think real world situations, there are real world situations. They are telling the customer support, if you perform some activity and if you give a call to the customer support, then they are telling, so still system is not updated. Until the system is updating, we can't state anything. Why? The information temporarily stored in a transaction processing system. Now you have performed a query using to the transaction processing system. Now then transaction processing system request relevant information. What's the information? Some relevant information from corporate memory or a database. Obviously there's a database. It might be very small database, a temporary database, a place that store information. A temporary storage, it's not a permanent storage. Sometimes it's stored in a simple web server located in that company. Every midnight it will sync to the head office or throughout the organizations. But it's just temporary storage. So the corporate memory or a simple database might be there. Now what happens? There's a retrieval of the relevant information. It retrieves the information back. All right, there's an apple, there's a transaction happening here related to blah blah blah. As an example, in here, an apple. Okay, it's retrieved that information stored. Oh yes. Now there's a response by TPS to the customer. This is the response. This is the activity that we can do. Got the point? So this is the journey for a simple query. So it's a simple query. It inquires, then request relevant information from the database. If information stored in the database, it back to the TPS and it backs to the customer. This is the normal journey or normal situation in a TPS system. Now, if we go a little bit further, it's not something only inquiry, but there might be situations like updates. As an example, there's a customer requesting an update. What kind of update? Just, I have purchased 3 apples, could you please update it to 4? The transaction just happened. Then TPS will perform that update to the database. That's how this happened. The updates can be happened. It might be like permanent update. As an example, your mobile number is going to change. This kind of thing can be happen. Or it can be simply a processing, updating relevant information. It's a corporate memory database. Customer to the relevant information update. So that's the basic of this high level information. Now we'll combine these both of the journeys. As an example, there's a usual query of the first journey is inquiry, and TPS goes to the database and retrieve it and provide the response. The second one is requesting an update, so the database is going to be updated. Those are the both. Those are the two queries that important in here. Now this is the update relevant information. Now if we speak like high level, by combining these two journeys, we can find, all right, this is a very high level architecture of transaction processing system. Now if your examination asks draw the high level architecture for transaction processing system, what you should do, you should draw the extract same and explain it, what are the activities happen here and there. So there might be a possibility to ask this kind of a question. It's quite easy now. You know how to describe each component if you are getting a question in the examination. All right, any questions? Any questions related to the transaction processing system? All right, then I'm trying to combine this transaction processing system. Now this is the high level architecture for the transaction processing system. Now we are trying to merge with the management reporting system, combine with the management reporting system. What is happening here? Now this is a place that store the information like permanent storage for usage of management or management usage. So managers can use this information. This information is temporal. So this information or this data flow is a temporal store. This is a permanent store. As an example, if you want to retrieve data of last 5 years, then we can do some sort of experiment or retrieval, and we can find what is the profit of last 5 years, or we can find what are the peaks, or what are the failures, or what are the products that they are not selling. So these are the combining with the management reporting system. So you should explain, all right, this is the transaction processing system and this is the management reporting system. Now if we get an example like a question in the examination, discuss this high level architecture, you should clearly explain this is the transaction processing system and this is the management reporting system, and you should clearly state how these interaction happens and why these interactions are in the system. Yeah. Now it's quite important. Transfer data from one end to another end, moving to the system for a long time, and we'll get that information for a temporal. But once it comes to updated, you might see there's no any back arrow in here. So if we store the data permanently, in a management reporting system, we do not use that back to our temporal storage because it's permanent. It's for a long time. Clear? Now that's the story of this management reporting system and the transaction processing system. Now, well, I don't want to explain further this management reporting system. It's just quite basic, and it's just a mechanism to report the information or store the information for a long time and extract that data and process it, and store that information or retrieve different reports according to the business or the managerial requirements. So that's the importance in here of this management reporting system. Now we have a good understanding on this customer responses and other stuff with the corporate memory databases and management reporting systems and so on and so forth. If you have any questions, please let me know. I can help you always. The best thing is don't wait until the last moment. Ask the question earliest as possible. All right. So these are the transactional activities. These are the transactional activities. These are short-term activities. So it's not long-term activities. It's just very short-term activities happen in the system. And it's just temporal. Most of the cases, it's just temporal storage. But once it comes to management reporting system, it's not something temporal storage. It's reporting for long term. So what happens in here? It's the mechanism of transaction from one end to another end, how the data transferred from the customer's perspective to the management reporting system, and how it retrieves, how these transactional activities happen. Now, this is the importance of these transaction processing systems along with the management reporting system. So if we are trying to discuss only the transaction processing system, it's incomplete, because management reporting systems are quite important, because we want to store long basis information storing. So if it is not in there, it's a big problem at the end of the day. So the best thing is having these transaction activities in short term and management reporting system. So that's the high level discussion of this management reporting system and transaction processing system. What are the common attributes? What are the common attributes related to this transaction processing system, and how these things happen? Keeps a record on each transaction. Keeps a record on each transaction. Minimum transaction details and timestamp. So in any given transaction processing system, the bare minimum or the basic information, the most basic information is the time that we are trying to save, and some transaction details. It might be the product ID, it might be the product name, or some relevant information. Those are the transactional details, very basic. It should be uniquely identified. These transaction details should be uniquely identified. If it is not uniquely identified, it might be another big problem. So what happens in here, it keeps a record on each transaction, minimum transaction details and the timestamp. So we should store that information in a proper manner. So that's how a transaction processing system should be happen. That's the behavior of a transaction processing system. The performance measurements are carried out in short time durations. So the performance measurements are carried out in short time durations. It's not long time. It's not long time. It's a very short time. The time is quite small. It's not big time. It's usually day. It's usually day, but hourly basis or within couple of days. Sometimes we can have these transaction processing systems, but we should not extend up to 7 days. The bare minimum, the maximum should be like couple of days, 2 to 3 days, not more than that. Usually it's 1 day, or usually it's 1 day. Sometimes it might be hour. As an example, the number of transactions happened during last hour. We should retrieve it quicker manner and easier manner. Then we can perform many things. So shorter durations and other stuff. The next point is transactions may be considered as database activity. Each transaction may be considered as a database activity. Read or write to database. Now, what happens in here? Whenever there's a transaction, the transaction should be considered as a database activity. That means some activity to read or write. That means we should put some sort of data, inside some sort of data to the database, or we should retrieve that data from the database. So that's very important. Each and every transaction may be considered as a database activity. The data can involve with read, update, or delete. That means adding a new record to the system. Or it might be fetch the data from the database. Retrieve. At the beginning, we discussed an example. Reading that data. We are retrieving that data and we are finding something. And update. If we want to modify the data, we can update the data. Or we can delete the data. We can perform some sort of removal. If the information is not in there, we can delete the data. I'll get an example in here. To delete the data, in the sense, there was a transaction happened, like a supermarket. A person went to the supermarket and purchased 5 apples. Okay, then he paid it and left the supermarket. After a few seconds, he has realized, or not, I don't want these apples now. So what this person is going to do, back to the supermarket and asking, so sorry, I don't want these apples. Could you please let me know the possibility to return these apples? Since the information stored in the database temporarily, it's not a big problem. And the supermarket guys are telling, all right, no worries. We want to update the system, and they are getting that apples back and they are updating the system. Now, actually what happens, they have deleted the record or the transaction performed by yourself. They have deleted it. If it is persists or kept in the database, it's a big problem. It's a big problem. Because there might be incorrect information flows. Actually, there wasn't something happened, but there was a record. So this is a quite important point that we want to emphasize in here. A data can involve with read, update, or delete. Clear? Update in the sense it might be modification, some sort of. A person purchased 3 apples and after a while quickly identified not 3, it should be 6. That's an update. Or it might be read, extracting data. Large amounts of input and output. There might be a lot of information, retrievals and insertions. Get an example again. Transactions happen in supermarkets. Any given minute, there are a lot of things inserted and retrieved. Usually it's insertion. Continuously, the information will insert to the system. It's an input. It's an input. Well, there might be some situations that not much inputs, but there are many outputs, like a lot of reportings are there. In that case, it's usual situation. The usual situation is reports are generated as an output. These are the large amounts of inputs and outputs. Large number of users. So sometimes you might not think about, oh, really, we don't want a lot of users, but actually to perform proper transaction processing system, we want large number of users. Why? That's the question. Why we need a large number of users? Because the core reason behind is we want to find, sorry, we can't perform manually or paper-based implementations for these things. We want a digital engagement. Think a situation that in a given supermarket, there is a person who is perform the same thing continuously using manual or having a calculator and pen and paper and perform these things. It's a big problem. It's not something easy to perform very large calculations in a shorter time. So what happens in here, it's a large number of users are there to be implemented. If there's no any large number of users, as an example, there might be 2 people for a year. All right, no worries at all. It's just 2 people in the organization. All right, we don't want a system at all. It's just we can have a A4 sheet and have a printout and do the signatures and complete it. That's it. We don't want. If there are more than 10 people or 25 people, and if it is an iterative activity, the best and easiest thing is having these kinds of transaction processing system, because large number of users are mandatory feature in a transaction processing system. Huge storage requirements. Now, once it comes to transaction processing system, it's mandatory to have a big storage. It should be not a very small storage. Why I have mentioned it specifically? We'll get an example. The information stored temporarily. Information stored temporarily. We can store information temporarily in a web browser, isn't it? We can save the data in a web browser in a temporal manner. We can store the information, but it's not something easy to store 500 megabytes, one gigabyte of data in a browser. That's why I have mentioned or specified it's a huge storage requirement. We want a database. We can't perform like ad hoc databases like Excel sheets. We are unable to perform these transaction processing systems in a paper-based. We want a big storage, at least bare minimum 1 gigabyte of storage. If there's no such requirement, it's not a big problem. But there might be very simple forms, few forms can perform that. Sometimes you might think, all right, well, we don't want a huge storage. Yeah, basically huge in the sense, it's not like 1 or 2 kilobytes, at least 25 megabytes. So it will remove this. Huge will take moderate level, at least storage requirements are there. Low computation complexity. Once it comes to transaction processing systems, we should perform many of the activities in very low computational complexity. Unless what happens, we should really consider about the security. We should really consider about the data parallel processing. We should really consider about how the data compute. Lot of things we should consider, a lot of things. So it should be low computation complexity because we are trying to work on in a very limited period. It might be one transaction completed, then the next one. You may think what happens in a supermarket. One person arrives to the queue and there's a cashier, enter the details and payment done. Then the next person starts. So the delay should be minimized. If there's a big delay or a long time required, it's a biggest problem. So the best thing is to have low computational complexity. If it is not, the time or the delay might be a big problem. All right, so these are few of common attributes related to the transaction processing system, but there are many. So I have organized few of them, but you may go through and understand more on these attributes. All right, I think I spoke a lot, uh, though there are quite low number of students today, no worries at all. Do you have an assessment or something to submit today midnight? Is that the case? Do you have any special thing to complete today itself? No worries at all. I'll share the activity. You may do it quickly, so we can complete the session quickly because it's just a few students there. For now, it's just fine. Nice. You may be able to quickly finish it and submit it. You may have this chat forever, so others can do it later on nowadays. The email address is not mandatory. If it is required, if you want, or if you want to get a copy of the answer, please add your email address. If you don't want, you just skip it. No worries at all. You can just type test@gmail.com. That's more than enough. All right, thank you. So attributes are given like real-time processing and reliability. Yeah, acceptable. But once it comes to like question, if this question fired in the examination, so the answer should be explained. So it's not something like just having these attributes. You should explain it properly to get full marks. If not, you might get just very low marks. So I believe these questions might be directly in the examination. So you might be able to answer it quickly. All right. We'll go to the thanks for the attendance for the assessment. Will in class activity. It's not an assessment at all. Don't worry. We'll go to designing a transaction processing system. How to design it? Having a transaction processing system is worth the investment for an organization. So it's quite important and it's very valuable for an organization. But is that required to keep all the transaction occurred in an organization? Now, you know, different each and every level, each and every day, from early in the morning to midday to morning, and lot of transactions, lot of situations, of lot of activities are happening time to time. But do we need to store all the information? But do we want to store all the information? If it is required to store, what are the problems that we are facing? It might be capacity, it might be systematic issues, lot of things. So what happens in here? Having a transaction processing system is a worthy investment for an organization. Yeah, well, how to decide what are the data that we want to capture? This is the important question that we have to identify. How to decide what are the data that we need to capture? Because lot of attributes are there. Even in a given case, we might find thousands of millions of different aspects for a given case. And for a given case, there might be lot of transactions, and each transactions may required to store a lot of attributes. So what we want to do, so we want to figure out what are the key features or the most important features that we require to save. And we should remove the unwanted data. Now, that's the importance that we want to find. And identify firing few questions. Now, we are trying to develop or design a transaction processing system. Now, we can identify by firing few questions. Is this event worth for recording? The very first question is, do we want to record it? Is there any value of a person or some information to be recorded? If it is not valuable, then what's the point at all? What's the point at all? Is this event worth for recording? Is there value to record that information? If it is not valuable, why should we keep that record? Got the point? That's the first question. You should ask, is there a value to store this information? Is this worth to store this information? If yes, what are the features that we need to capture? For a given transaction, there might be a lot of features available. We want to find out, we want to figure out different important feature. Now, get an example, a person's CV arrived to the organization, and we don't want to save some additional information, number of pages in the CV, or the background color of the CV. Those information we do not require to store. Those are not features that we need to capture. But there are some important information that we need to capture, like degree, results and master's degree and blah 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 blah. Some important information related to the context. These are the features that we require. For some reason, there might be some another data required for someone else. So it depends. It depends on the question, basically. Features can be defined by the usage or the value of that information stored. If there's no value at all to store that information, we should not store that information. What is the form of record? How we are going to store that information? If there's only few people arrive and few transactions per year, we do not want to develop a system. Instead of, we just can have a paper and write the stuff and complete it. That's it. But if there's very high, or the velocity of data generating is too high and it's very important to store, we don't want to spend physical space to store that information. A lot of things if we consider, and transaction per minute there might be a lot of transactions. So the best implementation is the digital or a database can be used. That's a form of record. How we are going to store that information? The fourth question, how should the information record? What is that? That means how we are going to store that information. Tagging with specific information or detailed description. I'll get an example. Now, an organization received your CV, and the organization has created a specific record for you based on their indexing. You got 1121. It's like your index number. It's a specific or unique number. And we have tagged the details, this number, your age, your name, your school, your degree, your current location, your NIC number, a lot of things can be stored. It might be detailed description, sometimes it might be a special needs might be there. A person with special needs. So it's tagging its specific information or detailed description. Now, by firing these questions, we can identify whether we want a transaction processing system or not. And if we require a transaction processing system, what are the information that we are going to store and how to process it? What are the information that we want to store for future use, and what are the information that we want to remove, and what is the primary identifier, the specific information or the detailed information that we require to store. These, after identifying these kinds of things, we can perform easily, or we can design a transaction processing system quite easier. Transaction is characterized by 4 properties referred to as ACID properties. Now we'll see what are these ACID properties. These are quite important once it comes to data related to the transactions. So in any case, if these ACID properties are not fulfilled, the data can get into a big problem at the end of the day. First of all, we'll understand what are these ACID properties. The first one is atomic. This is the first one. Then consistency. Data should be consistent. Then the next one, isolation, is the third one. Then the durability. This is the fourth. So these properties are very important. These properties are very important once it comes to transaction processing. Why? We'll see one by one the importance and what are these keywords or what do you mean by atomicity, what do you mean by consistency, isolation, and dialogability. We'll go and understand one by one. Atomicity. Actions can be begin. So what happens here? Actions can be, so the actions can be grouped together, and either all actions in a group will occur or none will. That's the meaning of that. If there's a sequence of activities happen, everything will happen, all or none. All the actions are happening or none of the actions will happen. Nothing will happen. We'll get an example. Now this is your account A. There's a savings of 100 rupees. This is the initial stage, or the begin stage. So initially your account has 100 rupees. So your savings has 100 rupees. And B is one of your friend. And this is the B's account. Currently, he earns 1,000 rupees. At the initial state or the beginning of the transaction, there's 1,000 rupees. You have only 100 rupees. We'll see what happens here. After a while, you are transferring 50 rupees. You are transferring 50 rupees to one of your friends. Now, you transferred 50 rupees, and initially there was 100 rupees. Now it's 50 rupees. Now, transaction processing system stores this 50 rupees. It's not updated in the database. It's not happened still. It's just temporarily happened. None of the places are updated up to now. It's just temporal storage or temporal database is updated. What happens after a while? There was a network issue. So actually the database transaction wasn't performed. That means this 50 rupees wasn't credited to this account B. While there was a transaction, there was a network issue. So system wasn't got complete update. The atomicity comes into the context now. That means if there's an action happens, it should be complete or nothing will happen. Now in this case, the activity wasn't happen. Actually, the activity wasn't happen. Activity got trashed. So as per the atomicity, what requires to do, this 50 rupees should be back into your account A. It should be revert back to your account. Now you have 100 rupees as at the beginning. At the beginning, there was 100 rupees. Now it's 100 rupees. Though you have transferred 50 rupees, it wasn't success due to a network issue. If this network issue wasn't happened, then no worries at all. This 50 rupees will move to here. It's credited to account B. Then it will be deducted 50 rupees now and 1,000 now, 1,050 now. Got the point? That's the importance of this attribute, atomicity. Let's go to the next one, number 2, consistency. What do you mean by consistency? Consistency is the transaction must be represent a correct transformation from one state to another state. The transaction must be represent a correct transformation. That means there should be no issues in here. Now, we'll see. We get an example again. At the initial stage, there's 100 rupees, there's 1,000 rupees. These are the initial stage. This is yours account, and this is one of your friend's account. Now, this is the initial stage. Now, what will be happen? You are trying to transfer, you have transferred 50 rupees to account B. Now, after this transaction, the system should update properly with 50 rupees for account A, that is yours account, and your friend got this 50 rupees. We'll assume there's no any transaction fee and other stuff. This is account B. This is account B. Now, this is the term for consistent data transfer. Transfer 50 rupees. It is in here. It is in here. Not 55, not 45. It's 1050. It's not 1055. It's not 1045. It's perfectly the same amount. That's the consistency. Once it comes to like transferring, transaction must be represent correct transformation from one stage to another stage. So it's a transformation from one stage to another stage, and it's a correct transformation. There's no any mismatches at the end of the day. This is the second term that we want to discuss related to the acid properties. We'll go to the third one, isolation. What's the meaning of isolation? Isolation means actions do not interfere with each other. Multiple simultaneous transactions must be made to appear as if they are series of sequential activities. What's the meaning of this? Actions do not, there should be not any interfere with each other. If there are multiple simultaneous transactions must be made to appear as if they are series of sequential actions. This is the importance of this isolation. We'll see what's the meaning of this isolation. What do you mean by this isolation? We'll get an example again. Here there's a bank. Here there's a bank. Now, one person in a queue to withdraw money from his account. Now, at the beginning, we'll get this is yourself. We'll get this case to yourself. This is yourself. And you have 100 rupees in your account, and you are trying to withdraw 50 rupees from your account. You are in the queue. This is a bank queue to withdraw the money. What you are doing, you are giving your bank card to one of your friend and asking to withdraw the money. It happens simultaneously. It happens simultaneously. It happens simultaneously. Same time the transactions are happening. Same time. For some, like there might be some electronic gadget that identify the time and other stuff. We'll get the same time it's happening. Same time. You are giving your money, their bank passbook and other stuff, and here there's a guy who wants to do the same transaction. Now you are withdraw 50 rupees, and this guy also withdrawing 50 rupees. Well, now what could be happening? Same time. Think your bank has only 50 rupees even. Your account has only 50 rupees. You are withdrawing that 50, the same time your friend also withdrawing 50 rupees. Same time. But initially your account has only 50 rupees. Is this possible? If it is not, why? Is this possible? Have you thought about this kind of a bad thing to do? I'm pretty sure you guys are not. But there's a possibility, isn't it? There's a possibility. A person can perform this one. He's in a queue. At the same time, he's giving his ATM card to one of friend and asking to withdraw the full amount from the account. Any ideas, any thoughts? No ideas, or is it all? Due to this isolation concept, this activity we can't perform in programming. I'm not going to that detail. We have synchronization and synchronization locks to avoid these kinds of things, synchronization and other stuff. So I'm not going to go that detail, but in a very high level, this isolation is the process or the key term that do not allow, actions do not, it's not allowed to interfere with each other. So it's not interfere. We are not allowed to interfere with each other. It might be multiple simultaneous transactions must be made to appear as if they are series of sequential transactions. That's the important thing. I think you got the point. Any questions? All right. The last key term, durability. Once a change is made, it's not undone by a system failure. We'll get an example again. Initially, your account has 100 rupees and one of your friend has 1000 rupees. The same thing going to be happening, isn't it? Now what happens? You are transferring again 50 rupees. You have transferred 50 rupees. Now this change is a permanent change. By having a system failure, it's not revert back. If there's a system failure, it should happen before the update, before the change happened. Before the change happened, if there's a system failure, then it can revert back. No worries at all. But if that transaction happened, then there's no possibility to revert back. There's no possibility to revert back. It should be moved to the changed position, or the change is permanent. It's not moved back again. This is the fourth component, or that's known as durability. So I think you got what are these acid properties. I'm pretty sure you should learn these acid properties well further. Please make sure to go through and understand these acid properties well. All right, we'll do a small activity to confirm your understanding. So we don't want to spend a lot of time. We'll quickly complete this activity also. I have shared in the chat. Okay, well, I think it requires some time to answer, knowledge at all. Okay, you might able to answer it later on. We'll go to the discussion again. Transaction processing systems and database requirements. What are these transaction processing systems and the database requirements? Depends on many factors. There might be a lot of things that to consider. Few of them are, very first thing is the frequency of transactions. If there are transactions happen in rapid manner, in very quicker, then the mechanism that we should handle the database writes or reads or depends. So if it is the frequency of the transactions are quite faster, so the database requirement should be adjusted according to that. If there's very slower database writes, what are these database writes? The data to be entered to the system. In simple terms, the data to be entered to the systems. If it is like it's not happen quicker, as an example, one transaction per day. So the database requirement is different. But when it comes to the supermarket, the requirement of a database or the writing speed is quite faster than compared to this one. It's a frequency of transaction. The size of captured data. The size of data that you are stored. If it is quite faster or quite slower, that's not a problem. The second one, the size of captured data. If it is large size of file or large size of data, as an example, a video data going to be captured, then it's a considerable aspect. The size of captured data. If it is just few text, it's not a big problem at all. The size of captured data. Retrieval frequency. How faster that you are trying to extract data or fetch the data. The frequency, the retrieval frequency, how faster that you are going to extract this data. If it is required to be performed in a sooner, and if it is not required to do it not in a hurry actually, then no worries at all. The database requirement might be different. But think a situation that we want to request data very soon, every minute, every second. If we want to retrieve the data, then the retrieval frequency has a high impact on selecting your database requirement or selecting the database. You should understand it's another factor that we should consider once it comes to designing a database. Stakeholder decisions. What are the stakeholders' opinions? It might be opinion based on the data. It might be the opinion based on the heap or the highest paid options, best options, or it might be organizational decision, or there might be an agreement in between your organization and some another third-party organization. It depends. There might be different stakeholder decisions available. So basically what happens in here, these organizational decisions should be matched with the transaction processing system. If you are the MIS engineer or MIS executive, you should clearly explain to your stakeholders, all right, these are the requirements that we are going to do. Financial constraints. We'll get an example. If we are trying to develop a complete transaction processing system for very high cost, but your organization is unable to perform this kind of a big amount or allocate large amount of money to develop a transaction processing system. That's the importance of this financial constraint. If you have sufficient money, still your organization or board of directors might decide, all right, do we want to perform this kind of financial transaction? Is that required or not? What we require to do, Is that mandatory or is that not? So that's the story of these financial constraints. So these are the basically most important factors once it comes to deciding a database, but it's not limited. But there are a lot. There are a lot to be considered once we are deciding a database or a system. All right. Now, up to now, we are speaking throughout the information systems under this topic. So we spoke about today transaction processing systems. It's mainly focusing on low-level workers, the front-end guys. So you should have good understanding now what is a transaction processing system, and these are the middle managers, the entire subject under these management information systems. We covered it. And decision supporting systems, mostly they're for focusing on senior managers. It's the focus on your assessment, your document. Some of answers are really good, some of answers are really worst. Some of you got only 2 to 5 marks. Still some of you didn't submit it. If you have any concerns, please let me know. I can help you. Don't give up this subject. It's quite easy subject. So I have given this the innovation part for you for the decision supporting systems, intelligent decision supporting, how to implement in an organization. So please make sure to submit. If you have some personal concern or any other thing, no worries at all. Please let me know. I can keep a record on that. I can help you. If you want some any other help, let me know. Don't give up. There are students who do not submit it. I think that might be impact for you for your final marks and other stuff. So please don't go to that level. Complete it soon as possible if you haven't still not completed. And it's executive information systems to be discussed later on in your subject matter. All right, last but not least, I want to emphasize another important point today. Transaction processing systems can be currently perform mostly leads online, because once it comes to transaction processing systems, we are unable to perform it manual. Then there's no value for having manual systems. It's an online transaction processing system. So once it comes to on transaction processing, most of the cases what we are discussed up to now, even it's online transaction processing, or PP. Online transaction processing is that provides real-time or near real-time transaction processing. You just think it's an ATM system. It's nothing. It's just you insert your ATM card and you withdraw money. The system got update quicker, isn't it? The system got update quicker. So that's the focus on this real-time transaction or near real-time transaction. It's an online transaction processing system. But in this case, we do not perform any analytical operation in here. That's the importance that you should understand, because I'm emphasizing in here, there are analytical processes or online analytical processes available to perform analytical aspects, but that is not our consideration, or that is not scope of transaction processing system. Once it comes to transaction processing system, the major or the highest focus is to performing all the activities or the processing, transactional processing in real time or near real time. That's the base. If it is beyond that, most of the time it might be an analytical process. Like as an example, if it is stored it online and it is processed for future use, it's mostly analytical process, online analytical process. Now, these are two examples for online transaction processing, but there are a lot. If you think wisely, if you are vigilant manner in anywhere, you might understand these kinds of transactional processing activities or transaction processing happening here and there. All right. That's ends with the online transaction processing systems. We'll have a small in-class activity to do. We can stop this session a little bit earlier, like we can complete within the next couple of minutes, because low number of students, you might see it, right? And I have another question, but though the number of students are not matter for me, I'm sharing the question to you. Well, if you'd like to share with your friends, no worries at all. Here you go. I'm sharing the question with you. Complete within a couple of minutes, then we can wrap up the session after discussing this question. You may start answer quickly. Don't get more than 5 minutes. All right. Any questions? Thanks for the answer shared actually. But once it comes to if it is an examination, the expected is uh, quite high. If this question has 10 marks, you might get around 2 marks, around 2 to 3 marks. If you want to go for like 5 to 8 at least, you should give some sort of examples. And very easier method, the easiest method is, if you're having a compare and contrast, basically have a table and explain the answer. That's the easiest manner. That's the easiest mechanism that you can do. Have a table, uh, one column OLAP, the other column is OLTP. Then compare 3 points and contrast 3 points. That's it. The similarities and differences, how these things and other stuff. So that's the basic. Right? Thanks for the answer. Well, and thanks for the attendance even. I'm pretty sure you'll get a good result at the end of the day. Good luck, actually. I'm pretty sure it's guaranteed. It's countable. Today attendance is countable. And well, thank you. If you don't have any questions, we can wrap up today's session, and we'll meet next week.